Now at 6, Governor Ron DeSantis' new book, The Courage to Be Free, hit shelves today.
In it, he makes the argument of how Florida could be the governing blueprint for the rest of the country. Joining us now is CBS 4's Jim DeFede with some of the biggest takeaways. I think when you write a book like this, it kind of means you're going to run for president. Right, Jim?
Well, I think that's the first takeaway. I spent today reading the book. It's an easy read. It's nicely written, but it's clear that this is really more of a policy paper than an introspective look into the soul of Ron DeSantis. He's not giving you a great deal of insight into who he is. He doesn't take you inside the room when decisions are being made. He doesn't give you that sense of putting you there as he came to decide whether or not to close the state down during coronavirus, or the decisions that he made about some other issues that he dealt with. It's instead sort of page after page of breaking down why he took this actions he did in terms of a lot of the culture war issues. So he dedicates about 2 pages to why he opposes the Chinese Communist Party and their influence in Florida. He does a couple of pages on the entire idea of transgender athletes. He does several pages on woke corporations. So it's sort of like a litany of his greatest hits. And you're right, Elliot. This is being cast as a blueprint for Florida. He uses that phrase, a blueprint, that he hopes that the rest of the country will pick up after. What I was hoping he would have addressed a little bit more in the book that I didn't see were some of the things still to be done, some of the problems in Florida. He doesn't address the housing crisis in Florida or what he's done or hasn't done about that. The runaway insurance prices, he hasn't done anything about windstorm insurance. Instead, like I said, he talks about a lot of culture war issues, and he just rails against the left, which is very good and very popular among Republican base voters that he's going to be courting when he announces his run for president in, I'm guessing, about 3 months.
All right, Jim, but this is not the governor's first book. He also wrote one back in 2011. How does this new book parallel that old one?
Yeah, I may be one of the few people who actually has read both of them. The first book was Dreams of Our Founding Fathers, which was written in 2011. It was sort of his response to Barack Obama's best-selling book, Dreams of My Father, which was introspective, which did sort of draw on Barack Obama's history and family life and all the rest of it. So in 2011, he wrote an ideological book, Ron DeSantis did, that he self-published. He paid for it to be published. That's a big difference. This time around, I'm sure he got a very large advance for the book, Courage to Be Free. But in the old book, in the 2011 book, it was really a book arguing against all of the executive power that Barack Obama was using at the time. It was sort of saying how that goes against the very core and foundation that the founding fathers would have wanted. It's funny what a difference a number of years makes and a change in positions. When he was in Congress, he railed against the executive authority of President Obama. Now, as the chief executive of Florida, he makes the case in the current book about why expanded power, why a strong executive authority is such a good thing. And so it's, in some ways, it's sort of a testament to how he views power. When others have it, power is bad. When he has it, power is very, very important and good.
Well, his numbers are great in the state of Florida. Let's see how that translates nationally as this develops. Jim, thank you very much.